a rat, for example, at varsity, and you're dissecting a rat, and you can actually see those nerves, the bigger nerves, you can actually see them physically. It's like a piece of string. Then that would be a large nerve, and it would be made of a number of smaller bundles. So it would have epineurium, perineurium, smaller bundles, endoneurium within a small bundle. Okay.
Now, even though it's a large nerve, would it be like smaller than that?
Yes, it's just like a really thin piece of string.
So like when you do the kidneys, and you know those like things that like stretch out, that form the pyramids? Is it like that size?
No, way bigger. Those things are microscopic. If you cut a section through a
I'm
kidney.
not talking about the like little lines. I'm talking about the pieces of string, like the string-like things that like I don't know what it's called. Never mind.
You're not calling nephron?
No.
Okay, no, then I don't know what you mean by the string-like things. Okay. All right, everybody happy? Okay. All right, and within a large nerve, remember that there can be multipolar neurons, which are transmitting impulses in one direction, and unipolar neurons transmitting impulses in another direction, all within one tiny bundle. Okay. Now, in a neuron, the longest part of a neuron is the axon. And so, if one has a bundle of neurons, okay, and cuts a cross section through them, am I more likely in this bundle to get a cap, or am I more likely to get a body? You get that? You understand that? Because the body is longer than the cap. So if I have a bundle of neurons and I take a cross section, the chances are that I'm going to hit axon. Okay. If you've got a whole lot of giraffes standing there and they're all different heights, and you take a chainsaw and you go, ew, what are your chances of hitting an eyeball?
Very low.
What are your chances of hitting a leg?
Well, they're higher than
Hit a neck.
Of
A leg!
I thought you said a tree. What do you mean, man? Why do you hit a leg while you're cutting down a tree?
But man, if you
Giraffe!
depends how high you cut.
Yeah, because the legs are.
If you cut the neck like this, then the legs are.
But you've got a whole lot of different heights of giraffe. You've got little booby giraffes, and you've got bigger giraffes. You've got big giraffes, and you're going with your chainsaw.
You'll cut legs then.
You're most likely to cut legs. But you're very likely to cut necks. Depends on where you do it.
Right, because the legs and the
But
necks
you're
are
far more likely to cut legs or neck than you are to cut eyes.
Yes.
Because the eyes are tiny. Okay, good. Okay. You get the story? Do you even understand that analogy between these things and giraffes and axons?
Yes.
Good. Okay. All right. Okay. So now we're going to talk about synapses, and you have to listen carefully to this. Okay. Wait. No. I'll try. Okay, you may have a 1 minute squirm break, and then you're back. You're not going anywhere, you're just squirming.
Now, you don't get my wisdom out on the 23rd.
In school time.
Yeah.
That's why God gave you holidays.
What holidays? I was
To
stuck
get your
in my
wisdom
house.
teeth out.
I was stuck in my house.
Next holiday.
Now I'm super scared.
And well, you should be.
Oh! What's up?
What does NME stand for? Isabella, of my 4 wisdom, I had 1 taken out in the chair.
Actually, all 4 in the hospital.
Okay, so That one was easy peasy. My other ones were also easy peasy, except that I was allergic to the antibiotic and I got an infection because I stopped taking the antibiotic.
Oh.
But other than that, really, no.
My sister got an infection from her stitches.
That's what the doctor saying to me, then I get slightly to get an infection. And I'm like,
They started turning black and then my mom took her to the hospital. And they had to remove it because when they removed the stitches, they didn't take all of them out.
What does NME
and I have to
stand
get
for?
tested for corona before I go.
Pardon?
I have to get tested for corona before I go in.
Did they stick the thing up your nose?
No, I have to go get tested on the Sunday, and then I'm going operating on Tuesday.
They stick that thing so far up your nose that they twist it down with dirt.
Yeah, it's on.
How am I going to stick it on that? Oh, you're going to do it.
Okay, right, we're ready, we're going. Okay, right. Facing this direction, wide awake, listening carefully. Not writing, listening. Okay. All right. So I was busy speaking to you about the region where one neuron passes an impulse to the following neuron or passes the impulse to the following neuron. That little region is very, very special and it's got a special name. So that little region where one neuron lies close to but does not touch the following neuron is called a synapse. And so let's say here we've got the end of one neuron. For example, let's say that this neuron is a sensory neuron, but it could be a interneuron. Okay? And this here, remember, is the synaptic knob. So this was a terminal branch or a telodendron, and this is the synaptic knob. And this is a dendrite of the following neuron. Does that make sense? Okay. So at that position, this lies close to but does not touch that thing. And there's a little space in between them called the synaptic gap or synaptic cleft. It doesn't matter which one you call it, I don't mind. And in the synaptic cleft, there is fluid, there is tissue fluid. Okay. So what actually happens is, if you look at the microscopic structure of the synaptic knob, it's got two very special things to it. One is there are lots and lots and lots of tiny little vesicles.
I've heard that word before somewhere.
Good, in the cell.
Oh yeah.
Little membrane-bound structure. Okay, so there are lots of tiny little vesicles, and inside the vesicle, there are chemicals called neurotransmitters. Now I'm going to go back to this and make it more detailed. I'm just doing it very simplistically first time round, and then I'll go back and make it more detailed, and I'll go back and make it more detailed. Okay, so in the vesicles there are chemicals called neurotransmitters. Okay, and an example of a neurotransmitter would be serotonin.
Also heard that, I don't know what that is.
Good. Or dopamine.
Oh!
Okay, you happy? Does this make sense? All right, so those are in the vesicles. Also, in the synaptic knob are an unusually high concentration of mitochondria. So that's a mitochondrion. Okay. So what happens when an impulse reaches a synapse? Tony, are you listening?
Yeah, I know.
Okay. So electrical, 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 electrical. Oops. Electrical cannot cross that gap. So what has to happen is that the transmission across that is chemical. Now you have to listen carefully to this, or else you're not going to understand that. Okay. On this side, which we're going to call the post-synaptic membrane, there are tiny little gateways that have, or channels is the correct word, that have got special protein receptors on either side of them. Okay, so they're little channels that under normal circumstances are closed, but they're little protein receptors on either side of them. And if you put a neurotransmitter into that little protein receptor, the channel opens. So what happens? Electrical, 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 electrical. As soon as the impulse reaches a synaptic knob, some of those little vesicles move to the surface and their membrane fuses with the membrane of the synaptic knob, and those little vesicles open up and they release the neurotransmitter molecules into the tissue fluid. And the neurotransmitter molecules diffuse across that little gap. And when they get to the other side, they attach to the receptors and they open the channels. And as soon as those channels are open, ions in the liquid pass through and it becomes electrical again. Okay, everybody happy and everybody understand that? So I'm going to talk about it again. I'm going to say it again. In the synaptic knob, there are lots of vesicles and lots of mitochondria. The vesicles contain a neurotransmitter. They can only contain one kind of neurotransmitter. Depends on the particular neuron you're looking at. So it could be a dopamine one, could be a serotonin one, could be another kind of neurotransmitter. And the receptors on the following side are only opened by that particular neurotransmitter. Okay, so electrical, electrical, electrical. Tony, stop it. When the impulse reaches the synaptic knob, then a few of the vesicles move to that surface membrane. Their membrane fuses with the surface membrane. They open up and they release the neurotransmitter molecules into the fluid of the synaptic gap. Those neurotransmitter molecules diffuse across the gap, and when they reach the other side, they attach to the receptor proteins, and that causes, it's almost like a lock and key, but don't you dare say that in a test or exam, that causes the channels to open. And when the channels open, ions flow in, and they cause the electrical impulse to carry on going in the postsynaptic neuron. Okay, you happy with that? But now there's this little neurotransmitter attached to the receptor and keeping the receptor open. That neurotransmitter has to be taken away and broken down. So there are enzymes in this fluid that break down, guys, I'm not finished. Those enzymes break down the neurotransmitters, and as soon as the neurotransmitters aren't attached to the receptors anymore, those channels close again. unfortunately, our bodies are very good at recycling things. It would be a complete waste to recycle the components of that neurotransmitter. And so the neurotransmitter components, the broken down neurotransmitters, actually diffuse across the gap and are taken up by the synaptic knob and reassembled to be neurotransmitters and put into vesicles, and they can be used again. Okay. Now the process of reassembling the components requires a lot of energy. And that energy is the reason why there are many mitochondria here. Now don't get it wrong. Kids always say there are lots of mitochondria to provide the energy for the neurotransmitter, the vesicle to go to the surface and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. No. The energy is required. A lot of energy is required to reassemble the components of the neurotransmitter and to then make more vesicles again, so that that neurotransmitter can be used again and again and again. You happy? You sure you're happy? Best you be happy?
So if the neurotransmitters keep it open, then what opens it initially?
So the neurotransmitters open it.
So
As soon as the neurotransmitter attaches to the receptor, it opens. But if that neurotransmitter stayed in that little spot, then that channel would stay open. Okay, right. So guys, you are to learn pages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 to the end of a synapse. And there are 3 activities there. There's 6.1, 6.6, and 6.5. Okay, so you're going to do it now. Starting now, or else I'll have to add work to it. Okay. Isabella, what's your job?
And scene.